A few weeks ago, at the start of the Advent season, I stood here and told you the story of a young boy in the UK who was over the moon about landing a classic role in the Christmas pageant, door holder number 3. Well, tonight I want to tell you a similar story, a story of a young boy who desperately wanted the role of Joseph in his church's Christmas pageant. And he was disappointed when the casting was made, and he was the innkeeper. He did his research. He went through the practices, the rehearsals as they got ready for the night of the Christmas pageant. And on the night of the Christmas pageant, when Joseph, the role he really wanted, knocked on the door of the inn, the innkeeper opened the door. And Joseph said, "Is there any room for us in your inn?" And the innkeeper said, "Yes! In fact, I've got the best room for you. Come on in, you can have my room." Well, all the congregation began to nervously laugh. And Joseph and Mary said, "Oh, okay." And Joseph and Mary went into the inn, and slowly but surely all of the pageant participants shifted from where they were on stage to join Joseph, Mary, and baby Jesus into the innkeeper's room. And the pageant went on. When the shepherds showed up, they went to the stables and found no one there. They made their way instead to the innkeeper's home and inquired about this baby and found Jesus there. A little boy who made room, who said, "I don't care what the story says. What the right thing to do is to make room for the Christ child." I want to tell you another story of a little boy in 1958 in Chattanooga, Tennessee. His name is Leslie Jordan. I've used illustrations of his life before. He wrote an amazing autobiography, a story of his life. Leslie Jordan was an obviously gay man growing up in the 1950s and 60s in Chattanooga, Tennessee. He wrote a story in his book about when he was 3 years old, the first time he remembered meeting Santa at a VFW post Christmas party, where his dad, the lieutenant colonel, was there holding court with his army buddies. And as all the small children were making their way up to see Santa and tell Santa what they wanted for Christmas, little 3-year-old Leslie Jordan went up and sat on Santa's lap and said, "I want a bride doll." That's how he speaks. I'm not mocking him. "Please, Santa, I just want a bride doll." I did not know what a bride doll is, but it's a little doll about that big, a girl dressed in a wedding dress. Leslie Jordan said his dad turned to Leslie's mom and said, "That's not happening." And they scooted Leslie away from Santa. As they got home, Leslie could hear his parents murmuring about this bride doll in the other room. And his dad said, "We're not going to talk about it. We're not going to mention it. Even if he brings it up, we're not going to say another word about it. We're going to ignore it, pretend like we cannot hear him. And hopefully he'll forget about it by the time Christmas comes." Leslie said he remembers on Christmas Eve talking with his mother as they were sitting around the Christmas tree, and he said, "Oh, Mama, I just know Santa's going to bring me a bride doll. It's the only gift I want. I cannot wait for it." She sent Leslie into his room, and she went over to her husband, and she said, "You're going to have to be the one to tell him. You break the news to him." And she went in the kitchen to make Christmas dinner, and she heard the keys rattle and the front door shut, and the car zoom out of the driveway. And Leslie Jordan's dad spent the next 4 hours scouring every five and dime store and Woolworths in Chattanooga, Tennessee, until he found his 3-year-old son a bride doll. Leslie Jordan says when he opened that package on Christmas morning, he was so excited he squatted on the living room floor and peed. A father who made room for his child, for whoever his child might be, carved out a place on this earth where that child felt and knew love unbounded. A few weeks ago, a family right here in this congregation, an immigrant family, found themselves without housing in a matter of minutes. They had nowhere to go. They have 2 small children. No place to stay, no transportation, no jobs, no money, no income, nothing. And a member of this congregation, Toma Baston, said, "Come and live with me." And she threw open the doors of her home to people from Uganda that she really had never met. And this beautiful family nested in her and her husband Bill's home for weeks, while she shuttled them to school and to work until they could finally find a place of their own. She made room when there was no room to be had. One final story, and it comes from the Gospel of Luke chapter 2, verses 1 through 20, that Carol read for us this evening. It's the story of the birth of Jesus. It's the one that most of us know by heart, right? In those days, a decree went out. But you know that theologian Fred Craddock says that for ages we've been interpreting that scripture wrong. Fred Craddock says that in Luke, the gospel suggests that there was a guest room that was already filled when the innkeeper opened the door. Now, in Palestinian homes, and by the way, Jesus was a Palestinian Jew. In Palestinian homes at the time of Jesus, the inns were merely a family home, which was a 1-room space, and a guest room next to it. There were no Motel 6s or Holiday Inns. So an innkeeper was someone who rented 1 room in their home. And in Luke, the scripture says clearly there was no room in the guest room. And so they laid Jesus in a manger. Well, the manger was in the main family living space. So Fred Craddock suggests that when Joseph and Mary showed up at the doorstep of the innkeeper, they had already had a guest booked into their 1 room that they had. And they did just what that little boy in the pageant did. He says the innkeeper gave them their own room because there was no room in the guest room, and laid baby Jesus in the manger, in the family feeding trough, because the animals lived in the home with the families. Now, in one way, we might say, well, that's weird. We've never heard that story before. But I think it makes sense when we look at what the shepherds do. As the angels come and appear to the shepherd, they say, "You will find this baby in a manger." What? You mean in someone's home? And so the shepherds know, with the pronouncement by the angel, that if baby Jesus has been laid in the manger, imagine if someone came to your door and you laid them on the mantle of your fireplace. That's the equivalent to the manger in a Palestinian home around the time of Jesus. An honored position. And so the shepherds would know with this pronouncement by the angels that room had been made for Jesus. And if room had been made for Jesus, maybe room might be made for them as they make their way to this home and pay homage to the one who would become the King of the Jews. When we make room, it expands until all have room. And the shepherds were bold and brave enough to take that journey and step into the space that had been carved out for them. Sometimes we're called to throw open the door and make room. And sometimes we're called to believe that maybe there is a space for us in the world, Sometimes we're called to step out on faith and say, I don't know what the journey is going to hold, but I know that because God is God, there is space for me in this world, and I will find it. When we make room for God's love and goodness to expand. This Christmas season, may we be room makers, throwing open doors that have been closed. And may we also be step takers, to step through doors that have been closed to us. That will be a Merry Christmas indeed. Amen.